The banking division of the National Financial Ombud scheme has received some complaints relating to kidnappings where consumers disclose their confidential banking information under duress. Kidnapping has been on the rise. The latest crime statistics for the third quarter show kidnappings increased by 11% to 4,577 cases in that period. Let's get an overview of the complaints the Ombud scheme has received. We are now joined by the head of the Ombud, of the Financial Ombud scheme, Reana Steyn. Reana, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us. I want to start off with the case study that you shared with us in your press release, and that is in relation to a complainant who actioned essentially a transaction that cost him 103,000 rand and then eventually wanted the bank to be held accountable or liable at least. Just quickly tell us about what the complaint was and from your investigation what you found.
Good morning. Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. Sort of to highlight this scourge that is, I think, on the rise to your listeners and viewers. So the case study that we mentioned, and we've received approximately 30 cases, and I just want to explain that we're only now starting to categorize those cases separately because it's rising. Previously, it was just falling under this umbrella category of fraud, but now that we see this is actually a thing on its own, we're going to track them. So this case was a typical case where the consumer was under duress, forced to disclose the banking app. The fraudsters went into the bank, obviously loaded beneficiaries, and then did transactions to the value of, over 100,000 rand. The bank picked up that this is unusual transactional behavior, and they flagged it. And then they did the right thing in this case, and they phoned the customer and said, "Is this you? Must we actually release the funds?" And obviously, under threat of the customer's life, they confirmed to the bank, "Yes, please proceed. This transaction is me." Now we know that there was, a situation where the life was at stake, but the bank, of course, does not know this. They've done their part. They've checked, and then they released the money immediately after the threat of violence disappeared. The customer wanted the bank to then refund that money. When we received the case, we have to investigate, exactly what happened. First of all, we look at timing. Timing is very important. Like when did the bank phone? When did the customer phone? What could have been done? And if we find in any case that the bank could have done more or should have done more or should have stopped the payments or mitigated the loss after they were told this was fraud, this was under duress, this was with a gun to my head, then obviously we will say that the bank is negligent and they must be liable. But if we don't find anything that the bank did wrong, our recommendation is that this is not a case where the bank is liable, but of course in this instance, the bank out of goodwill, because of a commercial discretion, because of the relationship with the client, they made a partial payment. And we will see that in some instances. But yeah, that is really, I think, a typical case that we're starting to see.
Yeah, and the bank, of course, paying out of goodwill or gesture of goodwill. But from the transactions that were actioned, is it clear whether this was a cash withdrawal? What is it? Was it a transfer to another bank account?
In this case, it was transferred to other bank accounts. So, some of these instances, people are standing at an ATM, where they're forced to hand over their card and PIN right there and their cash is withdrawn. Then, of course, there's even less that the bank can do or the customer to alert the bank. But even in those cases, some customers will lodge a complaint with us to say they want the bank to refund that money that was withdrawn with their card and PIN at the ATM because there was somebody forcing them to do that. In other instances, it is actually, they've got time and they actually force the customer to either open the app on their phone or to go into the internet banking and make the transfers, and load beneficiaries and transfer money out. and in those instances, there's maybe a bit more time delay. Yeah.
Yeah. So with this case again, if it was an online transaction and money being transferred from one account to another account, surely through the KYC, know your client, the banks should be able to find out who is the owner of the other account that the money has been sent to. And from the Ombudsman side, have you been able to identify who owns that particular account and whether or not that transaction could have been stopped?
Correct. That is exactly the route we follow. So the banks do cooperate with us, so we'll follow the money. So sometimes, and in many cases, it's not even just transferred to one other account. It is transferred to an account, and then from that account, there's a fraudster waiting and immediately transferring it out to another account again, or to multiple other accounts. And then the money is withdrawn cash. Especially if it's big amounts, they split it up, and then it's withdrawn in smaller batches somewhere else. But this is, of course, a coordinated event. This is not something that happens on a whim. There are fraudsters waiting for the money to arrive in the accounts, and then they withdraw it immediately. But yes, we get all the details and we follow the money. If the money is available somewhere in an account, we will find it. If the money, could have been recovered, if the bank acted quicker, we will also find it, and we'll find out that information and then make the bank responsible for repaying the money they should have and could have sort of safeguarded. Yeah.
So again, in this particular case with KYC, know your client or know your customer, we know that this is important, even from the FICA regulations. Was the Ombudsman able to get to who owned the account? Was the individual held accountable? Because even if the account is used as a conduit, to open an account, you need to bring your particular identity details, and those details being shared with the banking institution that you're opening the account with.
Yes, so are you 100% correct? So, of course, you just need to remember that the fraudsters also cleverly make use of money mules. Now, these are often youngsters that are paid a small amount, or people who are desperate for money but have a bank account and they've got very little in their bank account, and they are asked to then give access to their bank account, which was legitimately opened, to a fraudster. So that also happens. So and in that case, once the money is gone, and we found that the bank that the consumer complained about, her own bank, was not liable, the rest of this situation is then part of the criminal case and the criminal investigation. If we find that not one of the banks in the chain was negligent, even for opening their bank accounts, then it's part of a criminal investigation, and they need to then follow up with those fraudsters who opened the bank account, or with fake identity documents, or using money mules, because that's, of course, also part of the criminal investigation. So, yeah, there is something that happens at the end. Yeah. But, of course, in the front end, the consumer either get their money back or not from the bank.
Yeah, and again, I'm sorry, Reana, for me, again, even the other bank where the money is being transferred to, even if you speak about a mule that is used, once there is a lump sum of money that is deposited into an account that ordinarily doesn't receive all of that money, it triggers something within the banking system.
Correct. 100% correct. So and that's why they often split up the money into a lot of small accounts, like I've explained earlier, so that it doesn't raise so many red flags. But if it raises a flag, there'll be a hold on the money. And we often find matters where that is where there's money available, to recover, because it's sitting in an account, and that bank didn't actually allow the transfer out because they flagged it as an unusual transaction. Yeah. I mean, a recent case, the customer lost 800,000, and there were about 300,000 rand left in the accounts 2 banks down the line because the bank flagged it.
Yeah. So what are some of your tips that you'd like to share with our viewers this morning? What should they be looking out for? And also this thing that you are giving authorization for a transaction under duress, but the bank is unable to detect that this is actually being done under duress.
Well, I think the one tip we want to tell consumers is that, all is not lost. I think there must be people out there who this happened to them. And of course, I think it's a traumatic experience and they may be traumatized and they never think about complaining to their bank. I think you find customers who either complain immediately to their bank to refund them. And then you get customers who will, obviously go into a state of panic and they won't even think of asking the bank to investigate. So yes, there is something you can do. You can ask the bank to investigate. And if you're not satisfied, you can come to our office so that we can follow the money trail.
Okay.
If you don't think they did a good job of that. So that's the one thing you do have rights to complain and follow the money. The other thing is that I think people must know that this is something that's on the rise. We don't know if it's because of all the millions of warnings that the banks have been giving over many years, like don't give out your information over the phone, that fraudsters are finding it more difficult to get into customers' bank accounts. Be very vigilant about your post online, because for them to target you and sort of hold you ransom or kidnap you to get into your bank account, they must maybe suspect something, that you've got money. And then also look at safeguards. Look at not having all the money available in your current account. Put it in investment accounts. Don't link everything. Don't link your bond account where there's maybe hundreds of thousands to your current account, because then they'll have access to all of that with your bank card and PIN. So I think look at insurance. There are insurance products these days.
Right.
So I think people need to just start being aware there's a new problem and there are safeguards.
Reana, thank you so much for your time. Reana Steyn there is the head of Ombud, of the financial Ombud scheme, on what you can do when it comes to kidnappings, but also the liability that lies with the banks. It's now